All right, this is the Lena Horne story. I'm compelled to tell this story for two reasons. One is 40 years ago tonight, I was at one of her concerts in San Francisco, but also last week, a theater in New York City was named for her. It's just called the Lena Horne, so I'm very pleased about that. So 40 years ago tonight, I was 19 years old, and just prior to this evening, Lena Horne was the toast of Broadway. And the recent show on television, Entertainment Tonight, showcased that quite a bit. And they were always showing pictures and images and interviews with people backstage at her concerts. And I thought, okay, she's the toast of Broadway right now. Well, that show was coming to San Francisco, so I knew I had to see it. I lived in a city called Fremont, which is just about 45 minutes outside the city. And all the big shows came there, so I was very fortunate. Got to see everybody I wanted to. So I go to buy a ticket to see the show, and it was 32.50, and I thought that was a lot of money, 32.50. So the girl selling me the ticket saw that I wasn't going to buy it. She said, "Well, it shows here that she's making an appearance at a charity event to save the cable cars, and those tickets are only $4." So I bought those tickets, and I took my sister, my mother, and my grandmother, and we trot on down to the Fox Warfield Theater on Market Street to go see this charity event hosted by Tony Randall and Michael Learned and Shields and Yarnell to raise money to save the cable cars because the tracks were deteriorating. Well, Lena Horne does make a surprise visit. She's right across the street at the Golden Gate Theater. She comes in, and the place just goes crazy. And watching these people just go so nuts for her, I said, I've got to do what I can to go and see this for myself. So I go to the box office and I buy a ticket, and it's in the first row of the mezzanine. So it's about 2 weeks after I see her at this charity event. And right away, I am pulled into her. She has just sucked me in. 19 years old, I am just completely riveted to every move she makes, every sound she makes. By the end of the concert, the man sitting next to me had to pull his sleeve away from me because I was grabbing it with excitement. I was just so captivated by everything she was doing on that stage. I didn't know what to do with myself. I had I was only 19. I hadn't been to many concerts. I think the only concert I'd been to was less than a year earlier was Liza Minnelli. So Liza Minnelli's in my head, that style of performance, and of course I always loved Judy Garland. So that was it. She was in my head. And then there was Lena Horne, and it just kept building and building these incredible female entertainers, these singers, these show women. So I didn't know what to do with myself. So I thought I'm going to go back and see the show again because Lena, her show was part of the Broadway season at the Golden Gate Theater. So she was there for 2 months. So I went back, I went to the box office, the Golden Gate Theater box office. I said, I don't care what night, I don't care how much, I want the best seat you can give me. And they were able to get me seventh row center orchestra. So I was very happy about that. Put down the 32.50. uh, so I felt I needed to express myself to her in some way. So I wrote a poem, and my sister wrote it out in calligraphy on parchment paper for me, and we burnt the edges of the parchment paper to make it look real stylish. Tied it up with a red ribbon and a single red rose, and I made my way back down to the Golden Gate Theater in San Francisco 40 years ago this night, November the 10th. And I get there pretty early because I want to just absorb everything that's happening. I just want to be in that theater and be in that presence of that theatrical experience. And so, show now goes on, and there's Lena Horne, and she is strutting her stuff. Uh, Time magazine, I believe they said, Lena Horne doesn't grace the stage. Lena Horne doesn't saunter across the stage. Lena Horne stalks the stage. And boy, that is so true. That is exactly what she does. Now, the show is over. I've got this poem in my hand and this rose, and I need to get it to her now. So as people are standing up during the curtain call, I make my way down the aisle, passing the people who all were laughing at me, not laughing at me in a bad way, but they just couldn't believe this 19-year-old kid was sitting by himself watching a 65-year-old, singer. And I make my way through, and they're all letting me through. And I go down the aisle, and I'm now at the foot of the stage. and I am now just looking right up at her. And I'm so nervous and scared now. I feel like I'm going to vomit. I feel like I'm going to throw up. So I'm literally looking for a place to throw up. Now the curtain comes down and then it rises up again, and she walks right towards me, and she grabs the rose and the poem from my hand, and she says in that Lena Horne voice, "You're my dream, you're my magic, and I love you." And she's holding my hands so tight like this. I'm down on, she's up on the stage and I'm down, in the audience. And I could feel her fingernail in my hand. Of course, I loved it. I loved every second of it. And I'm looking up at her and I'm just saying, "I love you. I love you." What else could I say? That's just what I felt. And she looks at me and she says, "You're my dream, you're my magic, and I love you." The audience just erupts in applause. And I look back over my shoulder and I can see the follow spots were on us. All the audience was looking at us and cheering and applauding. Oh, I'll never forget that moment. And then she blows a kiss to me. I kiss her hands, and then she blows a kiss back to me, and then she backs away, and the curtain comes down, and that's it. That's the end of the show. And the house lights come up, and all the people that were sitting around me are patting me on the head and patting me on the shoulders and doing this to me and saying, "Wow, that was amazing. That was fantastic. That was wonderful." I kind of held court there for a few minutes talking with all of these people about what just happened. I made my way to the stage door, and she was very gracious. There's Lena there, as you can see. And she let people come back into the backstage area. And I made sure I was last. And we had a wonderful encounter. She let me give her a kiss on the cheek. And she told me she was going to take my poem and hang it up in all her dressing rooms, wherever she went on the rest of her tour. Of course, that made me extremely happy. I got a chance to encounter, I saw the show another 2 times after that. I saw it up in Lake Tahoe, and then I flew to Kansas City to see it at the Midland Theater, for those of you in Kansas City. I just have never felt that way about an entertainer. And unfortunately, seeing people like Lena Horne and Liza Minnelli very early in my life, it put me at a different level of what to expect from an entertainer. So when all these other entertainers started coming along of my generation, I mean, not that they're not talented, they are, certainly, but I didn't understand why they had to have 20 dancers on stage with them and change costumes 20 times and show all that cleavage and or just rip blouses off of other entertainers at Super Bowls and things like that. Because this woman that I saw, Lena Horne, at the age of 65, she gave that audience that feeling of pow and pizzazz, and as if she had changed costumes 20 times and had laser and pyrotechnics and 30 dancers on stage. She gave us that feeling. When we left that theater, we felt we had experienced that, but it was just her. She did it all on her own. She did it just to us by herself. I got a chance to spend some time with her in 1994. She made an appearance on the TV show A Different World, and she played herself. She played herself coming to the college to meet the students, and she performed and sang the song If You Believe. The 2 performances that stand out in that show, in her one-woman show, are when she sings If You Believe and I Got a Name. Those 2 stand out the most for me, even though the show is filled with iconic moments. Those 2 really stand out to me. But that's what she sang on the show, If You Believe, on the TV show. And I was able to go backstage. And by the time I got back there, she was done with the press. She was done with the cast, taking photographs. And I was lucky because she was with her associate, Sherman Sneed, who helped produce this show, The Lady and Her Music. And I got to walk her to her car with Sherman. And I got to hold what seemed to me like a hat box, And I got to carry the 20 yards to her car. And at the time I was working for the Arsenio Hall show, and they were negotiating with her people to get her to come on the show. It never worked out. So I was glad that I got to spend that time with her right there on what is the CBS Radford lot in Studio City. right across the same soundstage where they did the show Seinfeld, and where I did the show 30 something when I was an extra on that show. Anyway, so I had a chance to spend some time with her, tell her all she had meant to me over the years, and how I still thought of her often and listened to her music. And she was, of course, gracious and kind and looked me right in the eye and said, "Well, I wish you all the best, Gary, in Hollywood." And I mean, all those lovely things she said. And that was the last time I had interaction with her. And I'll just never forget it. But I just felt compelled. I had to tell the Lena Horne story because a day does not go by that I don't think of her and think of how she affected me, because her show was all about having confidence and belief in oneself. I was painfully shy growing up. And after seeing that show, it flicked a switch in me that I never felt intimidation from people I encountered. I didn't see people as intimidating. I see them maybe now as an opportunity. So I never feel afraid to approach somebody if I feel I need to say something to them, or if I feel I have an exchange I can have with them. If there's anything she did for me, it's that. She just, for some reason, after leaving that show, I just was not a shy person anymore. I could just be with people and talk with people and do whatever I wanted. So there's the Lena Horne story. I know I probably left some things out, but there is the bulk of it. So thank you for listening. And 40 years ago tonight, it is as if it was yesterday. I think of it with such fondness. That experience of seeing that iconic entertainer. Thank you for listening.